Hello, friends. Today we're joined by my teacher, my professor, Justin Parpan. He's an artist. He's an art director known for his work on Star versus the Forces of Evil. Basically, like a lot of my childhood shows, Mickey Mouse shorts, Gravity Falls, etc. And he spent over 15 years in the industry. And in this episode, we're just going to be diving into his journey of animation and or like an art directing and his creative process and what it takes to develop like a good story or like visual storytelling. So let's just jump into it.
Yeah, do it.
So yeah, I know you kind of told like the class about what got you first interested in art. If you could share with the audience what first got you interested in like animation and art direction.
Yeah, well, let's see. I grew up in a small town in the deserts of Southern California. I wouldn't say there was like a ton of culture in this small town. It was a very small town, like a ranching community.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't really get into animation until I started working at this like little movie theater in town. And this was like not until high school. I grew up on like sort of like your mainstream like popcorn movies, like obsessed with like Steven Spielberg movies like Jaws and Jurassic Park. So I'd watch that stuff. But it wasn't until I started working at this like little art house movie theater that played like old movies, independent films, foreign films, and like animated films.
Yeah.
Um, Animated films that were like outside of mainstream animation that I started really like getting interested in animation as a way to tell stories. Um, and some of the first films that really like opened my eyes up to the potential in animation we're like at this little theater we got, a when Spirited Away came out, the theater showed that film. That film kind of blew my mind. Um Akira, was like a probably the first anime I was introduced to. So I saw Akira, this film called Fantastic Planet, which is this sort of crazy French animated film.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So it wasn't until I started seeing those movies that I was like, oh, okay, so like you can make animated films that aren't necessarily for kids, and all these films had a very specific look and style to them that was like outside of the sort of like traditional Disney studio style that I had grown up watching. So that was probably my introduction to the type of animation that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I remember you telling us about that in class. The Fantastic Planet one is the one with the blue guy, right? And like the
Yeah, the blue guy with the red eyes. It's a really weird,
yeah, that's
strange
pretty freaky.
movie. It is freaky.
Yeah. What's something that you wish that you knew when you first started out in art directing?
It's sort of the way I teach my design class. It's that, animation is really important. If you're going to be like an art director, you have to have like technical ability and you have to have, really good draftsmanship. Um, you have to be a really great artist. But
Yeah.
the thing that I wish I knew back then was that all of this sort of like all of the things that I was really interested in, like film history, design history, I'm obsessed with like movie poster designs, art history, uh, history in general. All of this stuff is sort of has become an important tool as an art director, where it's like, yeah, I talk to my artists that I work with a lot about technical stuff, but we also talk a lot about just like what inspires us, you know? We're constantly talking about like art history, and just like weird, obscure art forms like folk art, movie poster design, graphic design movements from the 1920s, just stuff like that. So it's like, it wasn't until I became an art director that I started to realize that all of this stuff, the interests that I sort of amassed in my lifetime, would become like invaluable and really useful as an art director, that it was more about that than just having like the technical abilities and the ability to draw, that you have to really be like interested in all areas of art and design, and then your job as an art director is to like pass that down to your artist and like inspire them to create, you know so that would probably be one. And the next thing is actually something that like we went over in class this week. It's that like as an artist, again, you have to have really good technical ability. You have to be a great artist, but even more important is you have to have like a unique perspective. That
Mm,
is like the most important thing as an art director is it's like, what is your unique perspective on the subject matter that you're depicting? You know?
yeah.
So what I'm doing right now on the thing that I'm art directing, it's a medieval fantasy thing.
Mhm.
How many times have we seen medieval fantasy depicted in animation? A lot of many, hundreds and hundreds of examples. Well,
Yeah.
it's my job now to give my own unique perspective on that. Like, let's try to show a type of medieval fantasy that no one's ever seen before, a style. So that's what I'm really focused on today. Like, trying to find what my perspective is. So that's probably the second sort of most important thing that I wish I had known when I was a kid, you know?
Yeah. When I was doing that assignment, I realized I did choose like the worst thing that I could try to make a pitch deck about, but
I mean, we got 2 semesters ahead of us, so it's like there'll be many opportunities and assignments to sort of show your unique perspective on something.
yeah. And yeah, speaking of perspectives and styles, you worked on Mickey Mouse and all those other shows and like Gravity Falls. What was your main strategy that you used to adapt to those different styles?
Well, how those shows kind of came about was you need to adapt and you need to sort of obviously, each show has like its own specific style. So if you're not, on those shows, I wasn't the art director, I was working under an art director. So first, what you do is, I mean, they have to see something in your work that speaks to like what they're making. So, with both Mickey Shorts and Gravity Falls, there was evidence in my work that showed that I was like, I thought in a similar way. My work sort of excited them in a particular way where they're like, okay, we could take this and adapt it to the thing we're working on. Or I just like had work that really demonstrated like aspects of the style of that show. So on, yeah, Gravity and Mickey Mouse shorts, I came in with a portfolio that like the art director looked through and sort of just like saw something in, it was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, this is sort of like similar to what we're working on, or like, oh, this person like shows like an ability to work in a variety of different styles and they would totally be able to adapt to this style.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it.
Yes. So that was probably the most important. But then once you get on the show, it depends again on the production, but like, you have to be really game to like a lot of research involved in both of those shows.
Yeah.
Which is why like the sort of having this sort of vast interest in all areas of design, art and design becomes important because it's like on the Mickey Mouse shorts, we're constantly being asked to like, oh, in this episode, it takes place in there was like an episode that was about like the running of the bulls in Spain. So
Yeah.
like we had to basically go look at like Spanish painting and Spanish history, and like we were looking at like all these kind of famous like Spanish painters, um and trying to bring that look into the aesthetic of the episode. So a lot of that becomes important, just like being like really interested in all areas of design and like being game to sort of explore and be curious.
Definitely like for me when I'm thinking about something where like for example I went to high school for we did a lot of fine art
Mhm.
and I realized a lot of the people who enjoyed it more or like they really wanted they were interested in it they were the ones who didn't plateau like I was the one who kind of plateaued in the fine art aspect or at least in like traditional stuff but yeah that's definitely important in those projects how do you collaborate with other departments and or like writers and animators just to make sure
Mhm.
that the visual storytelling enhances the narrative.
Yeah, well, that's really, really important, obviously, on a production because especially in animation, one of the things I love about animation is that the visuals are so intensely like linked to the storytelling.
Uh,
So, and the cool thing about like even if you're working on a TV show at Disney, um, the productions aren't huge. Like, you get a little, you're in this big animation building, but like, your production is like within this like little space of the building and you're all next to each other, offices are all right next to each other. So like, layout artists, painters, art directors are working like right next to or in the middle of the storyboard artists and the writers. And
yeah,
it is like this, you could pop into anyone's office at any time. And this doesn't happen in all productions, but the best productions that I've ever worked with are the ones where everyone is like communicating and there's like a freedom of expression, and the writers are and the board artists are constantly coming into the artist's space and talking to them about like, the episode that's coming up, and like, hey, like, could you give us some ideas? Or when the board artists or directors on an episode will come into the art director's office, and basically want to work together on an episode. Like, hey, we have like this one sequence. Do you have any like sort of gags in mind or things that could happen in this space? Or could you like create this like giant, like an image of this room? So we have the image, we know what the layout of the room is, and then we can kind of board the scene around your drawing. That type of communication and back and forth has always been like the healthiest experience on a TV show. It doesn't always work like that. Like sometimes the departments are really segmented, and just the general, it's a lot about the vibe that the showrunner sets.
Yeah.
Sometimes the vibe is like we don't really talk, the departments don't talk to each other, and we kind of just mind our own business. But like I said, the best shows I've ever worked on are the ones where it is just like a collaborative effort to make like the best thing possible. And writers are talking to artists.
Is there like a specific challenge that you faced when being an art director, or like are there any specific ones that come with being an art director?
Yeah, I mean with the art director, it's a really tough job because it's like, you're trying to, you set you you have in the pre-production period, you have a fair amount of time to design the look of the show, and you design it to look, you want every show to look amazing, you
Yeah.
know? And then what happens is you start getting less time as you move into production, where it's like, well, now you're in this really sort of tight schedule and turnaround where we're actually like, you go from pre-production to the start of the season, and then it depends on the show and how much budget there is, but like most of the time you have like, say, like 2 weeks to work on an entire episode. So you
Wow.
have a 2 week period to basically take the storyboard that they gave you, and you have to sort of visualize everything in the board. You have to create a ton of backgrounds, character designs, props and effects, like everything visual that they're going to need to sort of execute the episode. And you have 2 weeks to do that. So, your job is to like, how do I maintain quality?
Yeah.
How do I still, if we want the thing to look great. So it's like you figure out ways to like, instead of like having the artist make, 100 backgrounds, figure out ways to like maybe cut corners to like, you strategize like, well, maybe in this sequence we could do one giant background and put our efforts in that, instead of like doing like, 20 different versions of that background from different angles. Maybe we do just one giant master shot. So you strategize, and then also like you have to be sensitive to the artist, and you want to avoid burnout. So you got to figure out ways to like, you don't want to burn out your crew. And you also like you want to inspire and keep them motivated and like keep a good vibe on the show, because there's
Yeah.
nothing worse than when you a crew is burned out and disillusioned and not happy. Like they're not going to be making their best work, and it's just not a good atmosphere to work in. So you really have to be sort of aware of that. So there's a lot of different parts in play when you're art directing that you have to worry about. um so it can be kind of, it can be a really sort of intense experience.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Those turnarounds that you were talking about, I'm definitely kind of feeling them right now because I'm doing a lot of like projects outside of school, so I'm very like back to back everything. Everything's kind of insane right now.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, school I think is a good sort of, you're getting a little taste of that, in school, where it's like, you have all these different classes, and there's all this like assignments due every week, and you have to do stuff back to back to back. So, you're getting a little taste of it now.
do you have like I'm sure you do. What would you say is like your favorite project that you've worked on?
Favorite project, yeah, it was probably between like Mickey Mouse shorts and Gravity Falls.
Yeah.
And that might just be something with there's a bunch of different reasons why. It's like those were two of the first projects that I worked on. And
Yeah.
so it's like you kind of always remember those like the first couple jobs you did were very like sort of impact, can be very impactful, and I learned a lot, and they just, I was really proud of the end results for both of them. I learned a lot, and those were my first two productions, like working at Disney. And so it was like just like perfect. I was a perfect age. I was like in my 20s. I was like I couldn't believe that I was like working at Disney, TV, and like it was just like, oh my God, like I can't believe I'm here and seeing all, when you work at Disney TV, it's like all these celebrities are constantly coming in, and like, uh, celebrity animators and just people that you've like grown up knowing, and like so it was pretty surreal experience. But yeah, probably those two experiences were my best. And then the Gravity one was just special because it was like, you know, it was that show was the individuals who worked on that show had all gone to school together pretty much,
Okay.
so it's like we were all the same age, same and it was just like it was like hard work, but it was also like we had like a lot of fun. It was just like, it's like, no one had kids yet or families, so it was like you just sort of like hung out like very late into the night, and just like it was very fun.
Yeah, I bet. Do you still talk to those people that worked on it?
No, no, I mean those are, it's sort of like it's like with you. It's like the group that you're going to, school with, like you'll stay in touch with a lot of those friends for, your entire life probably. So it was sort of like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'm not currently working with any of them, but I have worked with, all of those individuals. We worked together after Gravity. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I still keep in touch.
Yeah, that's great. I hope, no, no, no. I know I will. I know I will definitely speak to like a lot of people here. It's, it's like my uncles used to come here. Two of my uncles came here, and a lot of our family friends, it's super interesting. I realized a few years ago that I wasn't actually related to them. That they're just
Okay.
friends from US. They're just my uncle's friends from USC. So that's so I was like, I just hope that I could like when I have my kids that I'll have my friends that they call like uncle or like auntie. That's just very cool. But a lot of the ones that I'm not related to were just like they were there during like the Christmas parties and stuff, so I just automatically assumed I was related to them.
I see, I see. That's
I don't
funny.
know if you've ever had that experience, but anyways, yeah. You were talking about like burnout and stuff. You were talking about how to prevent burnout and make sure what would you say is your process for staying creative and also like keeping other people creative while avoiding burnout?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I have like I really like artists. So I
Yeah,
think a lot of it is that. I really like artists. I mean, it's one reason like I like to teach. It's like I like, young artists, old artists. I like artists in general. They're like my people. I like to, even as an art director, I feel like I'm a teacher. So
right.
actually the work that I do at USC doesn't seem that much different than the work that I do as an art director.
Got it.
Uh, and it just comes down to like I like artists, I like people, and obviously as an art director, there's, it's it is about business, and you have to like, you're trying to do a job.
Yeah,
But like as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at hiring. I mean, first of all, you start to meet and amass like a crew that you like to work with from show to show. At this point, I have individuals that it's like there's like two criteria that I'm looking for when I hire artists, and it's like, yeah, it's like you have to be like self-sufficient, and you have to have like massive like artistic ability, obviously. But then you just have to be, I'm gonna be spending a lot of time with you. So we have to just like, you have to also be able to like just hang out,
yeah, for sure.
and you know, be okay with the process of making stuff. And I don't know, there's just like a whole bunch of things that I'm looking for in an artist. And it's like, I've been lucky to, I've found artists, and, every show I work on, the crews get sort of like tighter and tighter, because it's like I have a group of people that like, I know how they work, we sort of work with each other. So we know what our working, how we work, how we like to work. and we just like being around each other. So it's like, those are sort of the types of people I'm looking like I like to work with. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like I didn't answer your question. What was the question again?
The question was basically, to shorten it down, how do you avoid burnout?
And then how to avoid burnout is it's like the more shows you art direct and work on, it's like you start to figure that out. Especially it helps to things can get a little crazy when you're young and you're making animation. And I'm sure you're dealing with this in school right now where it's like, oh, you don't have a family, you don't have kids, you don't
Right.
I mean this is like your priority right now is like making
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Well, when you first start out in the industry, it's same deal. Most people don't have a family and kids, and your priority is like, just doing the best job you can. So burnout can happen a little quicker because it's like, you're like, well, damn, I'll work every weekend because I really like what I'm doing and I'm trying to impress people. And then you kind of bump into burnout. So a lot of it is just experience. It's like,
yeah,
you know, if you've come into burnout before, you find ways to try to avoid it. And then it just helps. Like now I have a family and stuff, I have kids. So I really need to sort of treat the job like a 9 to 5. It's like I used to like treat it like it was a 9 to 11 o'clock at night. Those
yeah.
were my hours. Well, now I have like family and the kids, and it's like kind of shit. My wife works too, so it's like I can't like, it's like I gotta come home and I gotta be a dad and like help out and stuff, and I want to do all those things. So and I don't want to be burned out and grouchy when I come home. So you just sort of figure out ways to like make it a job, where it's like a job and I'm doing the best that I can and I want the show to be amazing, but I also have this whole other life outside of work. So the priorities sort of like make themselves known as you get more experience and you grow older.
You said treat it like a 9 to 5. What do you call this? How do you manage your time? Like what steps do you take to manage your time to make everything like fit in correctly without
Yeah.
like having conflicting things?
Yeah, I mean, I just, I really try to like utilize my time in a smart way. It's like I mean, the example is even though I love like research, I really love my favorite part about the artistic process is the research phase. I love it just because it's like I love to learn. Uh, I have to like, really cut that off at a certain point and like get to work and actually start drawing, you
Yeah,
know? So like and when I was younger, I probably wasn't great at that.
right.
Did a lot of research, go to the library a lot, especially Disney had this like great a reference library, so spend hours there like gathering reference. And then, oh my God, it's like 5 o'clock. So it's like, well, I got to start working now. I don't do that anymore. It's like I start drawing at like, it's like 11 o'clock in the morning if
Right.
I'm not drawing by 11 o'clock in the morning, I'm doing something wrong. So, but back in the day, I feel like I would seriously start drawing at like 5 o'clock p.m., you know,
Wow.
and I would notice like on the shows that I would work on, that's like when all the sort of like, I guess I call them at the time the old timers on the show, probably the
Right.
guys that are like 40s and 50s would start like leaving at 5 when I was just getting to work. I was just starting to draw. Now I don't do that. It's like
Yeah, that makes sense.
I want to basically by 5 o'clock, I should be like ready to go. 5 to 6 o'clock, I should be ready to go. So you just learn ways to avoid burnout.
I've been trying to wake up a little bit earlier. Trying to wake up earlier and like get to work earlier. I've just
Yeah.
been, like going like
No, no, it's a,
15
it's a thing
minutes
you need to
getting
learn. You know what the best line that I ever so I work with the on Gravity Falls the first season, the character designer, well there's two, but Phil Rindo was one of the character designers who's like this, he was like the main character designer on like Adventure Time and really knowledgeable guy. But he
yeah,
always had this line that he would pass down to all the younger artists. When we were working on Gravity Falls, where he would say animation is it's a marathon and not a race. So basically treat it like it's a marathon. Treat it like you're like running a long distance marathon and you're not running like a super intense race.
absolutely.
If you treat it like it's like a race and you're always like running quick, you're gonna burn yourself out. But if you realize that, a season of a TV show is like you could be working on that thing for a year. That is it's a marathon,
Yeah.
and how do you run a marathon? It's like you got to pace yourself, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
So that one always stuck with me. I mean, I'm also a runner, so like, it's
Oh
like
yeah, I didn't know that.
yeah, I run that's actually how I start my morning off. I run every morning,
Oh
but
nice.
but it's all about pace, right? I don't want to burn myself out when I'm running.
Yeah, for sure. I used to do cross country in like middle school though.
Me too, man. Yeah.
How do you approach designing environments and characters that feel real?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's important, even if I mean, obviously most of what I work on is cartoons and, animated TV shows. You have to be observant, especially when you're designing backgrounds and characters too. It's all about being like really observant. If you're designing like a room, like a character's room,
Yeah.
you really need to understand who that character is. So that's where communication comes important. Talk to the writers, you
Yeah.
know, uh, figure out like who the heck this character is, and then work with the writers to figure out like, well, what the heck does their room look like? Because, you go into any kid's room and it's like so specific,
Yeah.
and you want it to look specific. So you don't want to like I don't know, like a room in a bad movie or a sitcom where it's just sort of like everything's sort of stock and like feels sort of like, okay, there's like a chair over there, a desk, a bed, but
Yeah.
like there's no personality in this. Like, figure out like, and most kids' rooms are like, at least I know my kids' rooms are like messy as shit. There's like there's like, bad organization. There's like, I mean, it's like I was in my kid's room today and it's like there's just stuff that doesn't make any sense. There's like his Halloween mask is just like lying on the floor. I don't know why he was like playing with his Halloween mask. There's like three Godzilla toys that are just like knocked over, There's
Yeah.
like a Charmander toy also near the he was fighting Godzilla versus Charmander. His bed's not made. He's got his shoes all over the floor. There's cords tangled everywhere where his computer is. It's just like that's like real life. So it's like being interested in the character and trying to bring that into the room that you're designing or the space you're designing. Human beings are like, we live in our environments are like beautifully like chaotic. You look at a city, it's like cities are beautiful. Like they're just like so weird and like tangled with, I mean, maybe not the USC campus. It's like very pristine, but like, you go outside into like the city or downtown LA, it's like a mess of like power lines and signage and
Yeah.
trees and everything sort of growing together and in this sort of like jumbled chaos. Like that's how I like to think of like designing spaces or even characters. It's like, let's make them feel lived in. What's something real that could sort of like tell us who this character is? So a lot of it's that.
What would you say are like the most, like maybe top three common misconceptions that people have about working in animation?
Well, well, I mean, and maybe, I'm sure you've heard some of this, but I I dislike when people think that it's this sort of fun, silly job for kid, that like basically. Okay, no, here's the one that sort of it's when people, especially in this country, have this conception of animation that it's just for kids,
Right.
and that you're basically working on, this medium that's just for children. So, they talk to you like it's kind of like silly and like, all they want to talk about is Mickey Mouse, but it's like Mickey Mouse Clubhouse stuff, that's like animation to them. Animation is like such a rich, medium. It's just a way to tell stories. But yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing that I've noticed is it just most people don't their idea of what animation is very limited, you know? And most of it comes down to just like, they think it's like it's something they can put their kids in front of.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't like that. And, I feel like my job as a animation artist is like to try to like, change that misnomer and like, push the medium and elevate it, to something like more sophisticated. So that, I mean, that's a big one. Um, I don't know. It's like the other two I'd have to think about. I don't know. That's always been the my big sticking point
Got
with
it.
animation is I just don't feel like people understand animation.
Yeah.
Um, where it's like to me, it's just like film, I mean, it's the
Yeah,
same thing. It's just a different way to tell a story.
for sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. Another one that really bothers me is when people ask about like how you create the animation. Like, are you guys still doing like traditional, like pencil on paper and
Oh,
paint? And then I'm like, well, no, no, we're drawing on like Cintiqs now. Everything's digital. And they're
yeah.
like, so, they ask you like, oh, so is the computer like doing everything for you? They think that like the computer's doing most of the work. And then it's like having to explain to them like, well, no, no, it's still the same principles as traditional. You're just instead of drawing on paper, you're now drawing on a large digital screen. And you can tell it they still don't understand where they're like, well, it's almost like, they feel like you're cheating because you're drawing on a computer, but you're like, it's just it's kind of the same thing. It's just a new tool that we use. But that always surprises me how people can't seem to wrap their brain around how much work is still involved in like, drawing on a large Cintiq and, doing everything digital or 3D. It's still
Yeah.
just as much work.
Yeah. Or like when people I always see in like Instagram comments or YouTube videos, they see something that's CGI and they're like, that's AI. That's AI right there.
Oh yeah,
You
that's
can't
the
believe
new
you guys are
one.
getting tricked. Yeah, that's
Everyone
my
thinks.
generation.
Yeah, people, I guess it's just like, yeah, I mean, people they don't have, I think artists obviously have an eye for this, but yeah, I think that people outside of the arts have a hard time sort of deciphering. And yeah, AI is the new one where it's like, I'm shocked at how many times people think something's AI, and I'm like, that's not AI. Or the opposite, where something is so clearly AI, and it's like, you look at the comments and it's like everyone thinks it's real, and you're like, are you people like, this is clearly a fake image. It's pretty amazing.
It is amazing. Yeah. Let's see. What is like the main piece of advice that you would give to somebody that's not necessarily in our class, but just somebody in general who's aspiring to be an animator or an artist who wants to break into the industry?
Yeah, it's main what I would want to tell them is that the animation industry is like, I mean, it's the entertainment industry. It's crazy, it's chaotic, it's like don't have a set plan because most likely like your career is going to sort of like go in different directions. You got to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Be okay with the ride. Uh, you can't really enter the industry with like a clear plan on like this is what I want to do. Like I want to be, I'm going to be Brad Bird or I'm going to be Steven
Right.
Spielberg. And like that's the only thing that's going to make me happy. That is very hard to achieve in the entertainment industry to like have a clear plan and be able to execute that plan.
Yeah.
Most likely your path is going to be winding and weaving, and you got to be okay with that, that there's like a
Yeah.
journey that you're
Right.
going to take. And even if that journey you don't end up becoming Steven Spielberg or whatever, it's like it's fine. It's just like, I've been surprised at I can't say like I never planned to be an art director. That wasn't
Right.
even on my radar when I was in school. It's just sort of like you enter the industry and you take this weaving route and you start to like sort of go where where the ride is taking you. And you start to realize things about yourself where you're like, well, yeah, like I guess I do sort of like really enjoy designing spaces, or like design is like something I'm really interested in. You know, if you feel like content and what you're doing is making you happy, it's like, well, that's probably at that particular point in your life, like what you're supposed to be doing. Like even like, it's like at USC, it's like I'm teaching, started teaching just one class, and it's mainly just sort of curious about the experience. But at this point, I'm teaching about three classes, like not all at once, but like I teach to you guys, to the underclassmen, and then I teach them a master's, the graduate students too. And it's like I'm spending more time teaching now, which has been awesome. But I'm doing it because it's like I didn't expect to really love it, but I really am starting to love it. So I'm like, well, at this point in my life, if I love it, it's like this is kind of where I'm supposed to be right now. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So just be okay with the sort of the crazy, chaotic path that you're about to go on.
What was your initial going into it? What was your initial thing that you wanted to do, and then like kind of how has that changed from now?
Well, I mean, like I think a lot of animation students or students who go to film school, like I mean, I wanted to be Steven Spielberg. I wanted to be Brad Bird. I wanted to be, and I still have those ambitions to like I want to be telling the story. I want to be making the film. I have so many stories that I want to tell. That is of course always the frustrating thing in the industry is like not everyone gets to tell their story, you know? It doesn't mean you shouldn't keep trying, but like as I've gotten older, I've had to be more okay with the idea of like, well, at this point in my life, like I'm helping someone else realize their story.
Right.
And I need to figure out ways to be really passionate about the part of the process that I'm working on,
Right.
which, in this case, currently it's design. And I can tell stories other ways. I can tell stories through design. And, it's like I'm still currently always trying to like tell my own stories in a variety of different ways. I write a lot. I work on a lot of my own personal work. I'm a traditional painter. I am constantly pitching my own TV shows.
Right.
Uh, I've been in development a lot, currently in development on a TV show. So it's just like, you know, the path hasn't been as clear as I thought it was going to be, when I was going to school, but I just had to learn how to be okay with that.
Yeah, I was listening to a I don't know if you're familiar with Andrew Huberman, but he has like podcasts. He talks a lot about the brain and like psychology and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Oh, you know about him?
yeah, I'm aware of his, yeah, I like that guy.
Yeah, he was talking about like goal setting. I was listening about goal setting because I was trying to get like a clear vision, or like a general vision of like where I want to go. And he said kind of a similar quote to what you said, slightly different, but you said that animation is not a marathon, but it's a sprint.
Mhm.
One quote that he said was that a man who loves walking will go further than a man who loves the finish line, or something like that. So yeah, so that really has been resonating with me. I've been trying to, like you said, kind of enjoy the process more rather than focusing so much on the end product because the way he described it was like psychologically it can mess up the way that you set goals. But yeah, enjoying the process is definitely something that he put a lot of importance on, and obviously you're putting importance on that. But yeah, Andrew Huberman definitely talks a lot about that. It's something that I learned as well. So it's interesting that you also mentioned that. Um,
No, it's all about the process. If you hate the process, like you're not going to want to keep doing this.
yeah,
It's gonna be the joy and love has to be in the process of making the stuff,
yeah,
not the sort of like all these goals that you set for yourself, where I will only be happy if I like get to make a movie one day and
yeah,
I'm a famous animation director.
right,
It's like, well, what if that doesn't happen? That's probably you're describing like 1% of the industry
right.
gets to do that. So what if you don't get to do that? You got to figure out a way to be happy or you're just going to be miserable.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. If you could go back and like tell your 20-year-old you went to art center.
No, and I went to Cal Arts.
Yeah, sorry, Cal Arts. Yeah. If you were to go to your student self in Cal Arts, one piece of advice, what would you give?
It would be exactly what we were just talking about.
Right.
Love the process. That is like where the love is. Like learn to enjoy it. To me, I was all about the end goal. I was like extremely ambitious. I mean, I still am ambitious, but like it was really about the like, happiness was like these sort of benchmarks that I had set for myself. And I would want to go back and say, well, no, it's the process,
Yeah.
Even like just being in school, like that's a process.
Def-
Enjoy being in school, not like all these benchmarks that you set for school where it's like, well, I have to make like the best film that year and I have to like, one year I was obsessed with like gaining like a huge like online following and it's like if I don't do that, then I'm a failure.
Yeah,
No, the process of making the work and like making the friends and like that's like where the joy is at. So I would probably want to tell myself the same advice that we were just talking about.
got it. Yeah, I mean, that totally makes sense. I do have one more question though. What is one question that I should ask to the next person on the next episode?
Yeah, everyone has like their own like unique path.
Yeah.
And, I don't know how many of these interviews have you done so far?
I have three more lined up after this, but you're my second one.
Yeah, so like the cool thing is as you start to like, do more and more of these, like start to like see everyone's different path. Everyone has, I'm sure, like this like rich sort of like interesting path that they took to get to the current point that they're at. And I can guarantee you most of them didn't like set out to do this one thing and they just was like a straight line to get there, that it was like this crazy weaving, interesting, layered path that they took to get there. And I think that speaks a lot about just like life, the type of career you can expect, um, and how to keep happy and sort of joyous through the process. So yeah, just like I'd be interested to listen to these interviews and just hear everyone's path. Everyone's path is always so interesting and so unique, and it's never a straight line. Has your career been like everything that you thought it was going to be, or did it, has it been, like, I don't know. I'm sure you could figure out
Yeah, no,
a
that's definitely good.
phrase that question, but yeah, just I'd be so curious, everyone's path.
Well, that was the last question. This has been very great. I like everything you said, like all the information that you were giving me about the process. Um, I think for me, one thing is that a lot of the things I hear, when I hear it like multiple times from multiple different people, it really solidifies in my mind. So I think when you said that, it like reminded me of something that I'm working on right now, that I was too focused on the end product
Mhm.
rather than being focused on the process. So I think that's definitely something I'll keep in mind. I don't know if you have like a social media or anything, but is there a place where I'm like able to tag you or like?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram. I try to post on Instagram every day. So like I'm on Instagram. You can just find me at I think at J Parpan on Instagram. I have a website, Parpan Creative. You could check me out there. I have a Substack where I actually write articles on design because I like to write a lot, sort of write about different areas of design. So I have a Substack. You could find me also there, Justin Parpan. And then I have another Instagram called The Art of Everything, which is where I post all my like design inspiration, like everything I'm working on or even stuff I'm teaching at USC. I'll just sort of like put my thoughts on that Instagram with like a ton of like I got lots of reference images and stuff I'm inspired by. So yeah, I'm all over. I'm all over.
Okay, nice. So to everyone listening, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, just hit that follow and such, all that jazz. Um, but remember that animation is not a marathon if it's a sprint, if any of you guys are going into that industry. But I will see you, Professor Justin. I will see you in class. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Logan.